I am ready. Thank you everybody for joining us today for our webinar, Are You Missing Any Passenger Experience Puzzle Pieces? Brought to you by TripSpark and featuring Laketran, who we're going to be introducing in just a little bit. So I'll just get a handle on changing these slides. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so if you're new to TripSpark, we wanted to do a little intro to us. So we are People Transportation Technology. So TripSpark provides transit agencies and private operators in the USA and Canada with critical operational software and in-vehicle hardware. We have technology suites for fixed route, paratransit, demand response, NEMT, and rideshare. And we're part of Modaxo, which is a global collective of technology companies passionate about changing the face of public transportation, and part of the Constellation Software Group, which has 125,000 customers in more than 100 countries across the globe with offices on every continent. And you'll see here in this photo that we really like to partner with our customers. And you'll actually perhaps see me there in the middle with one of the customers that's local to me, being here in Toronto at Quinte Transit. This was just last week. Yes, they are very innovative. It was really an incredible experience to get to chat with them. All right, so here we have some introductions. So I'm there in the middle, Emma Givens, Marketing Communications Manager here at TripSpark. I'll go back up for a second to Ben Capel, CEO of Laketran, who is joining us today on the call, as well as Matt Meyer, who is the Director of Operations at Laketran. So thank you both very much for being here. We have as well Brett Werkheiser, who is our Senior Product Manager here at TripSpark. See him waving. And then Dan Pasawisti, one of our account executives here who works very closely with Laketran. So very happy to have everybody joining us today. And since you're spending your valuable time with us, I want you to know exactly what you're going to get out of today. So let me just see, Dave, I'm not sure. Okay. It works. I'm able to change the animations through the slide control. So what you're going to get out of this webinar today is a sense of the changing dynamics and expectations that transit passengers have in 2023. And we're also going to be, let me see. Sorry, everybody, just kind of navigating this. All right, how to grow ridership by competing with well-funded private transit providers. It's an incredible opportunity, even though it sounds a little bit like a fierce competition. You're going to get some ideas from agencies like yours. We have Laketran with us on how they use technology to improve their rider experience already. Give you some ideas on how you can do that at your agency as well, with some clear steps to improve your passenger experience. And then finally, we are so excited to share with you an initiative from Brett. He's going to be sharing with us a little bit later. So you're going to want to stay through the whole webinar because this is a really exciting development. All right, so let me make sure that we're all on the same page before we go too deep. And that is by framing the discussion around this term, on-demand transit. So we know there are multiple definitions and synonyms floating around in the transit industry in general. We love our acronyms, we love our synonyms. So it's our view at TripSpark that any true on-demand technology is inherently optimized for demand response options like paratransit, dial-a-ride, and NEMT, as much as it is useful for microtransit. So that's things like first mile, last mile, flex transit, deviated fixed route. And later on, Brett, through that initiative, is going to speak directly to how TripSpark addresses complete integration on both the agency and passenger side. So when you hear us talking about on-demand today, we're going to be talking about everything that you see in front of you right here. All right. So now that we're all on the same page, let's talk about some of those changing dynamics in the transit space for 2023 and beyond. Passengers now expect their booking platform to be at hand and easy to use no matter their accessibility needs. There's really this spotlight on them and their experience. And if we can create stellar passenger experiences, our agencies are poised to grow in ridership. Now, how can we, let me share this with you all. Navigating the tech here. Thanks for your patience. All right. So how can we compete with really well-funded private providers and still manage to do all of this at a more affordable cost to our riders? Well, we've organized this into 4 categories, let's say. So you'll see in front of you here, we've broken this down into customer service experience. What do we mean by that? Well, we want all of our passengers to feel like individuals versus one of many riders. The passenger experience should feel incredibly personalized. Second, ease of use. This is inclusive of riders of all ages with various accessibility needs. That includes booking platforms as well as vehicles themselves. Third, we have convenience and reliability. This includes shorter advanced booking windows, visibility into schedules and arrivals for better accuracy and less wait times. And then finally, we love this phrase, flexibility of choice. Riders want to go where they want, when they want, with as many mobility options to choose from as possible. Now, private options may not be affordable to all customers, but when a customer does have the choice, when our passengers have the choice, we think, well, they might use it if private transport offers them that customer experience, that ease of use, convenience, reliability, flexibility. But there are inherent downsides to them. That's a higher price point and without added benefits that public can provide, like environmental sustainability. So you might be thinking to yourselves now, we're already balancing so much, and we totally appreciate that. It is inherent in the work that you do that there are all of these elements that you're trying to balance every single day. So it might feel like adding yet another thing to your plate, right? Attracting more riders with an outstanding experience on top of being efficient, supporting our staff. But that's why we really want to offer you today a bit of a reframe in terms of how you approach this. And that is by focusing on the right something. So in reality, it's not about adding something to your plate. It's about shifting our focus to the 20% that makes 80% of the results. So by focusing on that right something, which we judge to be passenger experience, all the other things you were juggling suddenly fall into place, just like you see with this visual here. And the passenger experience allows you to also see improvements in efficiency, staff experience, your ridership. We'll take a look at examples today, starting with Laketran, but really I invite you to think about it from this framework. If you focus on passenger experience, all these other aspects will be benefited as well. All right, so to that end, let me pass it over to Dan. Dan, I'll be handling your slides for you, so you let me know whenever you want to shift something, but I'll let you take it from here.
Great. No, thanks, Emma. Very excited to have the guys from Laketran on today's webinar with us. Very quickly, some introductions for them. So we got Ben Capel on. Ben's the CEO at Laketran. They're based out of Paynesville in Lake County, Ohio. Ben's been with Laketran for the past 11 years, CEO for the past 5 years. He's also currently the president for NeoRide over the last 3 years in Ohio. Ben was also named to Mass Transit's Top 40 Under 40 in 2021, as well as the Ohio Public Transit Association's Top 40 Under 40, where he's currently a technology consultant there. And we got Matt Meyer with us as well. Matt's the director of operations at Laketran. He's been with Laketran the last 6 years, and Matt definitely has a keen eye for detail and is an innovator in the transit industry. So as I said, very, very excited to have Matt and Ben with us here today to share their experience and their insight. Both of them are trendsetters, innovators in the transit industry, as I said, and as such, industry leaders for other transit agencies to model their business around. So we're going to throw it around the horn with Ben and Matt here shortly. Emma, if you wouldn't mind just flipping to the next slide quickly. But wanted to touch quickly, as we're going to be discussing Laketran's implementation and use of passenger portal. But before doing so, I just wanted to review the solution quickly to provide some perspective for those who are maybe new to the solution. So passenger portal, it's a customizable web portal that can be skinned to your agency's logo and trade dress. It allows for profile management, trip booking for both single and subscription trips, allows riders to review their trip history. There's a stored value wallet that has a payment integration, and it also has live time vehicle tracking. There's a delegate module functionality built into it. Allows for, a caregiver, whether it's someone's son, daughter, a senior home administrator, to be able to book, manage and track trips on behalf of the riders. So another cool piece of the solution, as well as notifications that happen via SMS, email, or phone. So those can be sent out as outbound notifications, as next day reminders, imminent arrivals, or mass notifications. They can also be used for inbound notifications to book trips as well. So, ultimately, to say it simply, Passenger Portal surfaces and displays Pass or Novus to allow riders to interact with an organization, an agency's web platform, right? And so it gives the rider more control, more choice beyond having to call in and tie up phone lines with schedulers, dispatchers. It really just helps to automate that process. So Emma, if you wouldn't mind flipping to the next slide. And yeah, Matt, Ben, appreciate you guys hopping on with us here today. I'll kick it off with a question. I'm curious to know what challenges were you both looking to overcome when identifying solutions to improve your passenger experience?
You always want the passengers to have a seamless, easy to use experience that is one they come away with not being upset about.
No. Okay. And what did you guys get in terms of, the type of feedback from, your staff when you were implementing it? Like what was the impetus internally and some of the feedback that you were getting maybe, from your schedulers or your dispatch team?
One of the big reasons our previous solution wasn't mobile friendly. And so we were looking for something that was easier to use. We got feedback from a lot of seniors that they use tablets. And so a mobile friendly platform was really important. And again, since a lot of seniors are using it, it needs to be easy to use. And that was one of the big driving forces for us. The other one is that, people can schedule their own trips instead of having to make a phone call.
Right. No, absolutely. So I guess, it's not lost on me that there's a delta that you have to cross when you're identifying new technology that's going to help your business, help the community, and then actually implementing it to fit your day-to-day operations. A lot of that's flushed out during, the testing or the pilot process. Can you guys speak to us about, how your experience went during that process?
Sure, I can jump in with that one. Our testing process was actually very smooth. We had quite a few individuals who were helping test for us. We had quite a few customizations that we had asked for, so development was involved in that. But overall, it just went smoothly.
Great. And, how have things been going since then? It's been up and running for some time now. Where are things at today there?
It's been great. It just goes. It just runs.
Right.
I don't have to mess with it.
Perfect. Ben, I understand this resonates with you on a personal level. Would you mind sharing your experience as it relates to using Passenger Portal on a practical level?
Sure. So in 2019, I got in a disagreement with a ladder, and it evicted me from its presence. And I broke my leg relatively badly, so I was transit dependent for 3 months on Laketran's dial-a-ride service. And so I was a passenger just like anybody else. I work during the day, and it's not always easy to take time out of my day to place a phone call, to schedule a ride. It's also, inconvenient to try and deal with a payment method some other way, at least in my opinion. So I was a very active user of not just our service, but Passenger Portal while I was laid up. So, I got to use it from a user experience, which I think is always beneficial. We actually made some adjustments to the how often it reported GPS data while I was using it, because I thought we weren't doing it enough. But that's how I paid my fare. It's how I scheduled my trips. I saw where my bus was, kind of all those things.
Yeah, I guess probably no better way to flush out and verify the a new piece of technology than having the CEO use it, right?
Very much so.
No doubt. I wanted to just touch on one item quickly. Passenger portal originally, it couldn't be used to book both same day and advanced day bookings. Both of you guys worked with Tanya to make that a reality. I understand this hasn't been implemented yet, but how do you guys envision this improving your daily operations?
Yeah, I've talked to Tanya about this a whole bunch. From my perspective, microtransit is a new word for an old product. And, people disagree with me on that, but,
Sure.
We've provided dial-a-ride for 50 years at Laketran, and we've done a good job at it. We do, our community knows us for countywide demand response. So when I look at trying to take it to the next level and provide same-day service, I don't have a strong desire to change my already powerful brand. I want to use that and just make it better. And so one of the things we consistently said is like, I don't want to buy a separate platform with a separate fleet with all this separate, that to me is, from a customer perspective, obnoxious. And so you guys are good enough to customize it or do whatever witchcraft you needed to do behind the scenes, so that my customers don't have to have a separate account and all this stuff. And it's all just a seamless option for them, whether they want to ride today or in 2 weeks. And that's really important to me, because I don't want to send my customers somewhere else. I want to keep them in my ecosystem. I'm sure there's all kinds of sales jargon you can tell me about why that's important.
Sure.
But it's just it's a usability thing. Then they have to have separate accounts and all this kind of extra layer of baloney that and I cleaned that word up for you.
No doubt.
They just don't need. So that's, Matt can, I'm sure, talk from an operational perspective, but from a high level, there's no reason to segregate.
Right. Matt, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I agreed. And being able to utilize vehicles whenever, you have cancellations and things like that throughout the day in a different capacity like that as a, same day trip, that's peak efficiency, right? That's fantastic use of money.
Right. No, definitely. And like dial-a-ride 50 years ago, that's innovative, right? Like, and you guys are innovators, so I'm curious to know. I imagine you're always looking, to the future and considering, options for further improvement. Can you share your thoughts on what you feel the future of the passenger experience looks like, and what are your goals for the next few years on that front?
Yeah, the generation of seniors that are using, at least it's our buses today, grew up with transit. They rode buses as little kids. They can all tell you the story about, I used to ride the so-and-so line when I was a kid. And so to them, transit's not frightening. They grew up with it. And so It's easy for them to make a leap and ride a demand response bus. The generation after them grew up with cars, and they have low tolerance for the transit sort of standard, at least in my opinion. They want things now. They don't want to wait. They want to be, now. They want it to be easy to use. So we have to be prepared for that, or we're going to find ourselves to be irrelevant in the future. And so, being able to meet that instant demand or near instant demand is, in my opinion, critical to, the future of transit systems like us, where demand response is our big thing. We're upside down. We have 100 demand response vehicles. We have 40 fixed route vehicles. So we're a little different.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, Ben, Matt, thank you both for sharing your insights. It's always great to hear your perspective, and I'm sure the groups found this very helpful and interesting. We're going to pivot now to discuss a rides on demand solution, as well as what's next as it relates to passenger experience technology for 2023 and beyond at TripSpark. So, Brett, you have the floor for this next piece. Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks for sharing, Matt and Ben. Appreciate you joining today. Hi, everybody. I'm Brett Werkheiser. I'm one of the product managers at TripSpark. Specifically, I manage our rides on demand platform, as well as our mobility on demand initiative, which we'll get to here in a little bit. But I want to start with our existing on demand product for microtransit. Ben alluded to it. Emma said it. Microtransit means a lot of things to a lot of people. I like how you said it, Ben. You're solving the same problems, right? There's a lot of words associated to microtransit that people use interchangeably, and that's okay. They're relatively new to some agencies, maybe not to others, like first mile, last mile, flex route, fixed route replacement. The goal really is just to make sure that your riders have access when they want it, right? Like that, it's the world we live in. And as the guys from Laketran said, and I don't think that anyone understands it more than you guys as the agencies. Speaking collectively to the group, like y'all are the most passionate about your rider experience, right? You care the most about the rider, and it's our job as a software vendor that we're offering a great experience to your riders. So instead of talking about the names and the models and what does exist or doesn't exist, one of the things we like to say as a team, especially within product development, is when we're building these tools, we don't want to limit ourselves in your ability to innovate and offer new services based on our potential limited understanding or what may exist in the market today. So we like to think about it from more of a use case perspective, like what are the problems we're solving? And so Emma, we have two examples, I believe, if you want to go to, I think Tim is our first one. So this is one that's very familiar to everyone. Tim's always rode transit. He loves transit. It's his preferred way of getting around. But he just moved to a subdivision that's, new within the city. So there is no existing fixed route infrastructure. There's lots of examples of this. Maybe it's what we call a transit desert, a region that has never been well connected to your existing transit infrastructure, or maybe there was infrastructure and because of funding or lack of usability, those fixed routes were taken down, and now you have folks that, like I said, they're just not well connected into the rest of your infrastructure. So we see a lot of clients, customers that introduce microtransit services that would take Tim from his home, where there is no other transportation offering, and get him to the nearest fixed route so that he can continue his way to work or go, wherever he wants within that environment. Our next example is Christine. Sorry, I should have given you a heads up, Emma. I know there's a little bit of a delay. So Christine, she's your tradition. She's uses your eligibility-based services, right? Your traditional paratransit demand response services. But there are times that those services aren't running. While she is very capable of taking the fixed route, and I know cities do the best they can to be as accessible as they can, but no city I've ever been two is perfect. And if you are in one, there's still things like snow and ice and weather. There's always elements, and those might prevent Christine specifically, based on her abilities, from getting from where she needs to go. But now she has a Rides on Demand app that can book that spontaneous travel if she doesn't want to plan for something 2 days ahead. If she wants to go visit a friend or go shopping, she now has that accessibility. And I think, Emma, I'm going to pause there before we get into mobility on demand and how we're planning to add on to this existing functionality.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Brett. Yeah, I think that example of Christine being able to do, a last minute trip into town to, grab a drink with friends. It's part of that, when you want it at any time for any of our potential passengers. Very exciting. So anyway, before we show you the future, and I'll be passing it back over to Brett in just a second to talk about TripSpark's new initiative that every agency needs to know about in 2023. First, I want to take a pause to show that we are fulfilling our promise to you at the top of the webinar in terms of what we're going to cover today. So we promised that we would help you identify clear steps to improve your passenger experience. And to that end, we're going to actually run a quick poll. So Dave, who is in the background, he's our director of marketing, yes, has put up on everybody's screen 4 questions, which you can take your time answering. I'll read them out loud. So our first question is, so are there transit deserts in the region you serve? So if you remember Brett's definition of transit deserts, anywhere that's not, well served by transit, essentially. I think it's a good kind of summary of a transit desert. Secondly, we also have, how important is it to your organization to provide riders or the people who care for them more ways to book their own travel? And you can tell us what that means to your agency here with some multiple choice answers. Third question, like Laketran, do you have extra capacity due to last minute cancellations that you'd like to make available for last minute online bookings? And then finally, is passenger experience an area you're looking to improve in the next year?
So I'll go ahead and end it and share the results with everybody.
Great. So as you can see, we have a couple of standout answers there. So really interestingly, for so many of you who are attending today, there are transit deserts in the region that you serve. This is a really important point. So I hope that what Brett was just speaking to with our example, Tim there, really resonates with you and your passengers. We have as well a very high number of you who are really focused on improving the passenger experience within the next year, which is very exciting considering, we've dedicated this webinar to it because we 100% agree with you, and our initiative definitely reflects that as well. Very exciting. All right, Dave, do you think we're good to stop sharing? Yeah.
Good to go.
Amazing. Thank you all for participating in the poll. So let me just take back control here of the screen. So if you answered yes to any of those yes questions, right, that you're focused on passenger experience in the next year, that you have a transit desert in your region, we strongly invite you. So if you answered yes to any of these questions, we invite you to learn more about Passenger Portal and Rides on Demand. They're available now, and we can talk with you about how they will help your organization better meet the needs of your community. So you'll have here on your screen our email, sales@tripspark.com. We highly invite you to consider just reaching out and having that conversation. We're excited to explore it with you. All right, so now, very excitingly, I am going to pass it back over to Brett, if our screen share allows. That's always the question. Okay, Brett, take it from here.
Hello again. Okay. Speaking of very big terms that mean a lot of things to a lot of people, mobility on demand. I know it's been around within the transit industry for the past couple years, but it, relative to traditional modes of transportation, or the, how transportation agencies have looked at providing transit for their customers, I would say it's relatively new. I think most people would agree with that. I want to give, before we get into how we approach it, my favorite definition of mobility on demand because of how foundational and simple it is. To me, mobility on demand is giving your riders, allowing your riders to go where they want, when they want, regardless of their abilities, right? I think that's the most equitable way to look at it. And Emma, if you go to the next slide, I'll start to get into how we think about solving that problem. So we've talked about rides on demand. We looked at passenger portal with Dan and Laketran. Many of you may be familiar. We have a fixed route management product as well as an app for fixed route data called My Rides. So a general rule of thumb when it comes to user experience design, and this is in any industry, is the simpler and more seamless experience you provide for the end user, the more complicated and complex the back end is. And I think if there's any engineers on the call, they would agree with that. So over the years, and I mean, we're really uniquely positioned, I think, because we have solved the complexities of paratransit and managing fixed routes and now microtransit, like all of that exists. We're simply wanting to provide a single unified experience for your riders. And I'll carry that. I'll extend Christine's use case, which I think is the next slide. So Christine has traditionally used passenger portal, right? When she's booking her doctor's appointment or standing order trips to get to and from work. She also recently has started using the Rides on Demand app because she likes that the ability to be spontaneous. She deserves that, like we said, regardless of what her unique abilities are. Now, with the introduction of mobility on demand and the idea of bringing these experiences together, she can, on the fly and where she wants, book using the same mobile application. She can book her pre-scheduled eligibility-based trips as well as her spontaneous on-demand trips, and she can see them all in the same place. So now she's using less tools to do more things, which, like we said, that's the experience that we all want, right? Regardless of the software or the product we're using. And I'll continue with Christine. So what we're also planning on actively building towards is bringing that fixed route experience into that same application, right? Because regardless of the mode of transportation that your agency or the group of modes of transportation that your agency provides to your customer base, like we said, we want all of that in one place in an easy to use experience. So when I talked earlier about wanting to make the rider experience as simple as possible, and I forget Matt or Ben who mentioned it, but you gave an example earlier. Your riders don't care about all the complex problems that you're solving, that we're solving on the back end. They want to open an application and they want to say, I want to go from A to B. And we should solve that for them in any way that you guys desire or can imagine that service delivery. So whether it's a simple door-to-door on-demand trip, or whether it's a fixed route journey, or whether it's a multimodal journey where I'm taking an on-demand trip to a bus stop, taking that fixed route, and then meeting another on-demand vehicle to take me to my destination. We want your riders to be able to plan that entire journey and have all the steps in front of them in one place. Again, that's regardless of the service mode that they're choosing to use. I can talk about mobility on demand for ages and ages, but I think I'll pause there and hand it back over to Emma.
Thank you so much, Brett. It's a very exciting initiative. And of course, we definitely have time for questions after we wrap up. So if anybody's very excited about mobility on demand, like you heard from Brett, he can talk about it for ages. So we can definitely dive further in. So I want to kind of recap really quickly before we get into that question and answer period about what we talked about today. So we discussed how riders have these increasingly high expectations now. And Laketran was a great example of when you focus on the passenger experience, you also improve efficiency. So one thing that we saw visually on the screen that we didn't have a chance to speak to as much was about the huge reduction in no-shows over the past several years since the implementation of Passenger Portal. And that includes after ridership began to increase again after the pandemic, which is very exciting. So it improves efficiency, in-office driver and partner agency satisfaction as well. We also talked about mobility on demand. It's coming. So get Rides on Demand in place now, because anyone who has Rides on Demand, the app at this point will be the best position to make use of all of these other aspects that are coming your way. And then we invite you to the end to speak with us about Passenger Portal, about Rides on Demand by emailing us at sales@tripspark.com. So, and I know Dave on our call is very excited in particular to remind you about our Ignite User Conference happening this April. We invite you down to New Orleans and you will meet some of the people on the call here, as well as some of your fellow agency peers, which is going to be an incredible, incredible time. So you can go to ignite.tripspark.com to register. We're at 70% plus full, which is a very exciting fact since we're still just a couple months away. All right, so I'll leave us on this screen as we go into questions and answers. This gives you kind of a sneak peek of what you get with Rides on Demand and Passenger Portal in terms of how they look. But let me invite Dave to maybe facilitate some of those questions.
For sure. So we've had a couple questions that we've answered as we've gone along. So everyone can take a look at the Q&A panel and see that. In the meantime, we have one that hasn't been answered so far, which is from Derek. He says, can you clarify the roadmap? Am I to understand that TripSpark will offer a mobile application that provides a rider to book an MOD ride and or transit?
Yeah, so the Rides on Demand app, which services microtransit or provides microtransit to agencies, exists today. What we're doing is we're taking the existing functionality from Passenger Portal and we're building it into the on-demand app so that both rider bases, whether it's general public or your eligibility-based riders, whoever's using it can book travel. And that's going to be done in a very personalized way, right? Like we're going to know who the rider is entering the application. We'll show them the appropriate services that they have access to. We're building that currently. So that is in development. And then next year, we're going to bring in the fixed route, the real-time GTFS feeds, multimodal planning. But our focus for this year will be introducing the paratransit bookings into the Rides on Demand app.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that I saw a question earlier about, how does this sort of impact the bottom line? We were talking about Passenger Portal, but with the Rides on Demand app, what our hope is, and we've already sort of seen it a bit with some early adopters of the Rides on Demand app, is some of those passenger paratransit riders will start to use some of the conventional means. So, it's allowing them today, most vehicles have, wheelchair access, etc. There's a gentleman in Lethbridge that, he decides he wants to go to the library spontaneously. He does that today, yet he still uses Passenger Portal probably to book his rides for, getting to doctor's appointments and things like that. So he's using two different sort of interfaces today. We want to bring that together. And then further on, our hope is that people are going to be able to, that rely on paratransit services are going to be able to, move more easily to use the fixed route. So we all know that paratransit is not a cheap mode of service, and that transit agencies, you don't get reimbursed for the full price of those rides. So if we can help you make them more efficient, we're trying to do that.
All right. Next, I guess for Matt and Ben, if you guys have this answer off the top of your head here, Sarah Foster says, what percentage of your clients book via Passenger Portal versus calling in?
Sure. So last year we had 20%. So it was quite the adoption. We had a previous booking software, so some people kind of rolled over from there. But yeah, last year it was 20% of the rides requested were through Passenger Portal.
Awesome. And do you guys have anything to add? We had another question earlier about the bottom line. So specifically, Stefan says, my board keeps asking me, what is in it for the business's bottom line, not the client? What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, your business is your clients. So I would say it's about keeping your system relevant. And the fact that that's going to be the general expectation in the future. In a short term, you're going to have fewer no-shows, you're going to have fewer cancellations. You're going to use, in theory, when you have excess capacity, you'll be able to use that the same day. If you end up having buses sitting around, which we all know doesn't happen that often, but if it does, people can, sneak trips onto them immediately. So it's a combination of things, but I think a lot of it has to do with looking into the future and what people are going to be expecting from us, in the next 5 to 10 years.
Great. And we have a question here from Sandra. Do you have capacity issues?
Yes and no. We struggled with drivers just like everybody else for a while. We have been in a hiring kind of, I don't know, blitz, if you want to call it. And we've hired 75 people in a couple months. So we did have passenger capacity issues. We're working our way through them. Generally, we don't see a lot of new or different people. We see our existing clients utilizing the service differently. And so capacity is something to be concerned about, but it hasn't been a major issue.
Okay, I think that's it for questions now that I'm seeing. If anybody else has any questions, get them in quick. Okay.
I was just thinking, Matt, I'm wondering if you could speak to the prepayment option and how that has been supported. I'll go back to the slide if it jogs your memory, but I remember that being a definite benefit. So let me pull that up again.
Absolutely. So that was actually one of, along with everything else, that was definitely a big deal for us, because we now do prepayment for all of our trips. So when your driver arrives at the door of the customer doesn't have to say, oh, well, I left my payment up in the 11th floor of the apartment building, or there's no issues of, well, I thought the fare was supposed to be this when it's actually this. It cuts all that out. It makes the whole process a lot smoother because it's basically like booking a flight. You pay for your trip in advance. If you don't take your trip, you don't have to pay. The other benefit for us was we had electronic fare boxes on all of our paratransit vehicles. Don't have to have that now. So that was a really big deal.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it definitely, there's so many different ways that you've improved the passenger experience. I know there's some other things that have jogged my memory right here in terms of notifications. You know, if you're getting reminder calls, it's a lot harder to forget and it's a lot harder to no-show, which I'm sure speaks to why there's been a remarkable decline. And then just in terms of the usability, right? We talked about when we were preparing for this webinar, how being able to use Passenger Portal in this case, to use, you know, the web browser, but also tablets, since so many different people are using tablets these days to make it even more accessible. There's just so many different elements that you've thought of in the implementation of Passenger Portal to improve the passenger experience for your riders. So it's been great to actually hear, you know, from you. Actually, one more thing, I'm just remembering this as well. With agencies, you mentioned to me in the preparation for this about how agencies, and I have the quote here, said, never take this away from us in terms of how happy they are. I'm wondering if you could speak to that a little bit, because I found that particularly interesting in terms of, you know, even community health outcomes that it's revealing.
Absolutely. So we have two delegates, or tenants, just different words, that actually utilize this, and it helps them because they can book their own trips for so for like the mental health situations that we have, they can actually book their own trips, book trips for their own clients, and then there's no issues of if the trip was booked at the wrong time, they booked it, right? It also frees up our customer service staff. You know, instead of putting in, 11,000 trips a year, they can work on other customer issues. So it's a big benefit.
Definitely. I found it interesting that because the delegates, the tenants, can see that their patients, their customers have shown up to their appointments, it actually gives them some insight in terms of the community health outcomes. I thought that was such an interesting, perhaps at first unexpected benefit of this. And it just goes to show how, you know, passenger experience, building accessibility and inclusivity in from the start, which is definitely our approach to on-demand at TripSpark, how far that goes to improve everybody's experience overall. So thank you so much, Matt and Ben, for sharing your experience with us. I would love to just check in with Dave. Do you happen to have any last minute questions that came through?
Nope, we've had some comments come in and we'll be handling those offline. I did just want to remind everybody, so in the chat, I did post a link to information on Passenger Portal if you'd like more. Obviously, if you want more information, you can reach out directly to your account representative or email sales@tripspark.com. And we'd be happy to have a chat with you about rides on demand, Passenger Portal, notifications, mobility on demand, you name it. I've got a lot of stuff, we'll be happy to chat with you about.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today, everyone. Again, a big thank you to Matt and Ben of Laketran. We really appreciate all of your time and sharing all of your experiences and expertise. Take care, everybody.